Hello and welcome to the Welcome Core Application Support Session. My name is Becca and I'm joined by my colleague Asha. We are both members of the Welcome Core team and we've worked with community groups across the country to sponsor refugees. We are very excited to share with you this new service opportunity focused on the private sponsorship of refugees and strengthening communities. This session will provide you with detailed information to help you complete your application. Before we begin, we have a few housekeeping notes. We do offer translated captions. So if you want to use that function, you can select your language from the list provided in the closed captions section of the menu at the bottom of your screen. All right, in the next day or so, after viewing this recorded session, you are going to receive a follow-up email also with that session recording in case you need to watch it again, as well as the link to individual follow-up support. You will also get the link for individual follow-up support at the very end of this presentation. So if you stick around till the end, you'll get that link to be able to make an appointment with one of our coaches to get help with your application. All right, let's get started by going over the agenda. In this session, you will come to understand the differences in sponsoring a refugee you know, which is called Sponsor Someone You Know, and a refugee you do not know, which is called matching. We'll talk about the whole application process, including forming a sponsor group, which is required for both the naming and matching forms of the program. We'll talk about the application itself, the core services that you will provide to the refugees you support, as well as the commitment form that you will sign as part of the application. We'll go over the online training that you'll complete so that you're fully prepared. We'll go over in detail the information you need to sponsor a refugee you know. We will also go over how you can show that you are financially prepared. Finally, we'll talk about the application approval process and what happens after your group is approved. The Welcome Core is a new service opportunity for Americans inspired to welcome those seeking safety and in turn strengthen their own communities. This is a public-private partnership that is inspired by what America represents to so many around the world, a beacon of hope and refuge. Through Welcome Core, a group of at least 5 Americans or legal permanent residents sponsors a refugee or a refugee family to come to the United States. The group provides the refugee or refugee family with everything that they need for their first 90 days here in the US. Like I said before, Welcome Core is a public-private partnership. What this means is that it is a program of the Department of State of the federal government, specifically of the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, or PRM. And this program is carried out by a consortium of different nonprofit organizations with expertise in refugee protection, resettlement, and welcome. This consortium of nonprofits is led by Community Sponsorship Hub and includes Church World Service, HIAS, International Rescue Committee, IRAC, and IRIS, and Welcome.us. There are 2 ways that you can sponsor refugees with the Welcome Core program. In the matching program, sponsor groups are matched with a refugee that they do not know, but who has already been approved to come to the United States. Welcome Core also allows groups to apply to sponsor a refugee they do know, which might be a family member or a friend. I'm going to pass this over to Asha to talk us through the eligibility criteria.
Thanks, Becca. Eligible refugees must meet all of the following criteria. They must meet the definition of a refugee under U.S. law, and you can reference the code on screen for details if you would like. They live outside of their home country. They do not live in the United States. They live in a country where the U.S. government is able to interview sponsored refugees and process their cases. They are registered as a refugee on or before September 30th of 2023 by the UNHCR or the government of the country where they live. Or for refugees of Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, or Venezuelan nationality, private sponsor assistance then must have submitted Form I-134A or I-134 on their behalf by September 30th of 2023. They must be at least 18 years old, or if they are a child, they are being referred with their parent. Without exception, anyone under the age of 18 must be referred with biological parents or legal guardians. and they have not been previously denied for resettlement to the United States through the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. There is a refugee eligibility tool on welcomecorps.org. If you check the eligibility of the refugee you would like to sponsor, follow the drop-down menu for sponsors, click on Can I sponsor someone I know? And then the refugee eligibility tool will be indicated in the middle of the screen, as you can see here circled in red. You may also use the QR code provided on screen to access the refugee eligibility tool. You will see the helpful guides as you navigate through the eligibility tool, such as the one indicated here, which shows you how to identify a U.S. RAP, United States Refugee Admissions Program case number. It is important to know the Welcome Corps sponsor groups can sponsor only one refugee family at a time. If you are interested in being a matching sponsor, the primary sponsor can submit as many applications as they want, but they will only be matched again after the successful completion of the initial match. This includes the completion of the required 90-day report. If you will be submitting an application for matching and to sponsor someone you know, the primary sponsor can submit multiple matching applications, but a sponsor can only submit and sponsor one family of someone they know, one application at a time. Again, whether matching or naming, a sponsor only welcomes a new family after 90 days are successfully completed, including all reporting requirements. We're going to go over the steps before you apply. When you go to the website and click on Apply, it outlines the key steps to complete your application. The first step is actually before you begin your application. You must form a sponsor group of at least 5 people. Each group member must be over the age of 18 and must be either a U.S. citizen or a legal permanent resident. The next thing you will see on the page is a link to attend an application support session, which you are doing right now. You will also need to complete online training. Note, the session you are attending right now is not the required online training. Each group member will complete a background check. You will fundraise to have the money needed to support refugees once they arrive. You will need to have $2,425 per refugee. And also, as part of your application, you will research and make a plan to provide core sponsorship services. The elements of the application may be completed in any order. The first requirement we will talk about is the Sponsorship Essentials training. You can see on the screen where you will click to find the required training. One person in the sponsor group must complete this training and upload the certificate of completion. We really recommend all group members participate in this training as there is a lot of helpful information included. Here is an overview of the required training. You can see here the sections of training, which include Sponsorship 101, covering all the basics of sponsorship. Key mindsets will help you start thinking about how you will plan to set the refugee family up for success in self-sufficiency. The training also allows a chance for group discussion. You will take the information back to your group to talk it through and make a cohesive plan for how you will handle different situations. The training will take you into some deep dives on some topics to learn more, and finally onwards and upwards will set you up to think about how you will go from day 1 to day 90 and beyond. That is right, you will start thinking about the transition beyond sponsorship even before you begin. Again, once you complete the training, save that certificate on your computer to upload with your application. This is what the certificate will look like. Your training certificate will be on the last page of the training. You should save it to later upload to the application. If your training certificate doesn't show after you finish your training, log out and log back into your training session. You can then open your certificates by clicking on the star icon at the bottom left of the main screen, as you can see here on this slide. Now Becca's going to go over the background checks.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about those required background checks. Welcome Corps wants to make sure that all refugees are safe, so background checks are required for all sponsor group members. To complete your background check, click the link on the Welcome Corps application portal. This link will direct you to a section of the Sterling Volunteers website that is dedicated to the Welcome Corps. Each sponsor group must register on the Sterling Volunteers website to complete the background check. Please note that if you have already completed this background check with Sterling Volunteers within the last 2 years, then you don't need to complete a new one. Also important to note, if you do a Google search for Welcome Corps background check, the correct page on the Welcome Corps website is the very first thing that pops up. You will know that you found the right link and that you're in the right place when you see a screen that looks like this. You can see in the upper left-hand corner that this is the Sterling Volunteers site, and you can also see that Welcome Corps banner in the middle of the page. This is where you will register to complete your background check by following the prompts on the screen. When you are completing your background check, make sure that you follow these tips. First, you must use your full legal name as it appears on your ID. Do not use nicknames that are not your legal name, such as Bobby for Robert. Your name, date of birth, and contact information must match the name and contact information that is entered on your application. Pay very close attention to the month, date, year format. This will allow your background check to be automatically linked with your application and prevent holdups in processing times. If that information doesn't match in both places, it's going to take longer for your application to be reviewed. So make sure that you take very close care to make sure that this information matches. Background checks will cost about $15 each, which will be paid by the group member. Each group member will receive a personal email from Sterling Volunteers when the background check is completed. If you are prompted to give a good deed code, you can see that here listed on the screen as WCOR4. Most people are not prompted for this code. So if you're never prompted to put in a good deed code, don't panic, that's okay. But if you are prompted to give it, it is WCOR4 here on the screen. If you need additional information, you can find it at welcomecorps.org. Use the drop-down menu on sponsors, click on resources, and then find the information that you need about background checks, including the good deed code here where it says need help, as you can see in this screenshot. Before you apply, you must form your private sponsor group. Again, private sponsor groups must have at least 5 members, but can have more. All group members must be U.S. citizens or U.S. permanent residents. All group members must be at least 18 years old. All group members must live in the city or community where they will resettle the refugee, so that is within 50 miles of where the refugee will be living. Each group will identify a group coordinator. The coordinator will receive important information on your group's application and ongoing communications. So please select someone for this role that will be responsive. And your group must have a unique name. Here are a few tips when seeking group members. Group members can be from the same family and or live in the same house. Group members must be committed to helping resettle the refugee. And group members are not required to provide money of their own or their own bank account information. If you want to participate in this program and do so fully through fundraising and community organizing, you can absolutely do that and not put any of your own money in if you want to go that route. Additionally, here are some tips for forming your private sponsor group. You will want to consider the group size. If you are supporting a larger family, for instance, you may decide that you need a larger sponsor group than the minimum requirement of 5 people. Roles. Assign everybody in the group a role so that it's easy to manage and keep track of who is responsible for what. Take into consideration each member's skills and experiences, and if any members have local connections that would be helpful in tasks such as finding employment or enrolling kids in school. Consider the availability of group members. You want members to be available at different times of the day and different days of the week. This is to best meet the needs of any appointments and even unexpected needs of the refugee. You will also want to form as diverse a group as possible. If you're still not sure how to form your group, here are some more tips. You can reach out to your friends, family, neighbors, local faith communities, your employer, fellow employees, local clubs and organizations, as well as former refugees or immigrants in your community. And of course, you can also use your favorite online platform to see who else would be interested. Any of these are great ways to connect with like-minded people who might be interested in joining your effort. You will also want to form as diverse a group as possible. On the website under resources, you will find helpful information on the roles of the group. You can use this to research and decide how best to fill out your group. All right, I'm going to pass this back over to Asha to talk through the application.
Thanks, Becca. Right, we're going to go over the content in the application. It is not required or even recommended to do so, but if you choose to use a preparer or translator when completing your Welcome Corps application, please be advised that the fee should be minimal. You might want to speak to a few different preparers and translators to compare prices and services. Use your own email and set your own password to create an account. You should have access to your online application. Be careful about what personal information you share with others. The application asks if anyone helped you. You must include the name and contact information of the preparer or translator. You should receive a confirmation email from the no reply welcomecorps.org immediately after your application is submitted. The Welcome Corps application is free. Resources are available at welcomecorps.org/resources. Using a translator or preparer is optional. The Welcome Corps cannot reimburse you for any payments made to a preparer or translator. At the end of this presentation, you will receive information on connecting to a one-on-one support with a Welcome Corps application coach. This is the best way to get the most up-to-date information for application assistance. You can see on this screenshot where you will click to begin your application. The first step is to create an account on the application portal. Notice the parts circled in red. So, once you have formed your sponsor group and identified your group coordinator will create an account on the portal and be the primary contact for the group. This is the person that will be notified for other key steps and ultimately when there is an arrival information to share. You will then create a unique name for your group. Get creative. You can use your community name or something else unique to your group. Make sure everyone in your group knows the sponsor group name in case they need to reference it later on. And you will include this unique group name on the financial information you submit later in the application. Next, you are going to select a private sponsor organization if you are already working with one. If you are not, that's okay. Just select None/Don't Know. Welcome Corps will connect you with a private sponsor organization that will give you the ongoing support you need. And Becca is going to go over the Corps sponsorship services.
Great, thank you, Asha. For the Corps sponsorship services, you will need to provide the refugees with these Corps sponsorship services once they arrive in the United States. Information on these services can be found embedded in the portal. When you're working on your application, you can click on these guides to see what will be required of your group in terms of completing these services. Each of these little bolded sections will pop up to a specific guide for that core service. These services that you provide will include many responsibilities, and you can see here how you will access details within the portal and then include required information once you have researched each topic. Here, you see that there is space to enter a healthcare location in your area where refugees can go for the initial medical screening, also called the Refugee Health Assessment. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the Refugee Health Assessment, which is one of the core services. The Refugee Health Assessment is a requirement of the U.S. Refugee Program and should be completed in the first 30 days after arrival in the U.S. Each state will have specific clinics that offer this initial health screening. Check the resource guide on welcomecorps.org or the website for your state refugee coordinator or state refugee health coordinator to find a clinic near you. To say that again, every state has specific clinics that offer this screening. Not every clinic is going to offer this service, and so it's important that you double check to make sure that the clinic you choose actually provides the refugee health assessment. Here you can see a clear example of how you will include the name, website, and physical address of the medical office where the refugee will access the refugee health screening services. Again, you can look on the state-by-state guide or by contacting your local refugee health coordinator to find this location. You will also help the refugee access ongoing healthcare needs. Look for a primary care doctor or a clinic that accepts Medicaid. You will need to research where there is a federally qualified healthcare center, find a dentist that accepts Medicaid or is otherwise not too expensive, locate a pharmacy that accepts Medicaid, and research mental health care doctors or clinics, preferably one with experience serving refugees. On the application, you will provide the information as shown for these services. Be sure to include the name of the office and the physical address, as well as the website and phone number if you're able to find those. I'm going to pass this back over to Asha to talk through learning English.
Thanks, Becca. Another service you will provide is helping all adult refugees learn or improve their English skills. This includes signing up for an English language class. This could be online or in person, and also practicing English through conversation. Things you want to consider when selecting a class are the time and location of the classes. Make sure to plan for childcare so that parents can attend. Consider whether it would be helpful to find an online or an in-person class to best fit their needs. Also think about the cost of the classes and plan accordingly. Research, you can research that through community centers or anything like that. We're going to go over some interpretation and translation. If you don't speak the refugee's native language, you will need to use professional language interpretation. It is important to have quality interpretation and translation anytime you're communicating with the refugee, and it is especially important to use professional interpreters when discussing things like medical care and finances. Remember to never use children under the age of 18 to serve as interpreters. To find in-person interpreters, try contacting people in your community who speak the refugee's language. You may find people by visiting local restaurants, stores, or faith communities. Look for local cultural diaspora groups or contact international students at a nearby college or university. And of course, you may find that you need to hire an in-person interpreter through a local company. If you are unable to find in-person support, that's okay. You may use a phone interpretation service such as Tarjimly or another service app that offer over-the-phone translation services for a small monthly fee. Do not rely on phone apps such as Google Translate. They may be used for basic daily communication, but should not be relied on for important discussions. They are not reliable to be accurate, and not all refugees read their language. Again, on the application, you will indicate that you have researched these services and include the name and location of the English language classes and interpretation services that you will access. If they're online services, you can also include the website URL. You will need to research all public benefits accessible to refugees and know where and how to apply. These benefits include SNAP, or Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, Refugee Cash Assistance or Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, Medicaid, WIC for women, infants, and children, and Social Security income. Please note there may be other benefits available in your area. Make sure you know where you will take the refugee to apply for benefits. It may be that some of these applications can be completed online, so research those websites as well. If you need help, use local information sources like the United Way's 211 phone number or the USA Hello Find Hello app. Again, you will need to indicate the name and location of these offices. And then Becca's going to go over the Add Your Sponsor Group members.
So in the first section of this application, your group coordinator will input their own information as member 1, and then click to review the commitment form. The commitment form will appear on the screen. Please make sure to read each page carefully before clicking I agree. On the last page, the group coordinator will be asked to verify some information. You will need to make sure to check all of that information and then type in your name on the signature line. The date will auto-populate to the correct date. Once you have made sure that all your information is correct, click Done. The next page will ask you to enter the first and last name of the other group members, along with their email addresses. Each member will receive their own unique link to read and sign the commitment form after your entire application is submitted. Each sponsor group member will have their own copy of the commitment form. Once all forms are complete, the group coordinator will receive confirmation of completion. By signing this commitment form, every member in your group is agreeing to work with the sponsor group by doing what is required to provide the services the refugee will need after arrival, all while following the Code of Conduct. A link to the Code of Conduct can be found in the signature section of the commitment form. Let's go over the responsibilities explained on the commitment form. One of the services that your group will provide is appropriate housing for the 90-day sponsorship period. When you're looking for housing, you should consider temporary versus permanent housing, rental rates and security deposits, the location of the housing and access to buses, employment, and schools. Also, it's a good idea to take a look at the housing tip sheet link that's located on the Welcome Corps website for more information about how to find safe, clean, and affordable housing. If a sponsor group is sponsoring a refugee that they know, it may be that they live with the sponsors temporarily, if it's a close relative. Even if you're planning for the refugees to live with you, you must still plan to help the refugees find long-term housing. Refugees that are being sponsored by a matched sponsor group, so sponsors that they do not know, must have their own housing and should not live with the sponsor. Another responsibility that's covered on the commitment form is essential documentation. You will need to make sure that the refugees get their government documents and complete all necessary forms. This includes the Employment Authorization Document, or EAD, Social Security card, state ID and/or driver's license, completing the change of address form, also called the AR-11, and registering all males between the ages of 18 and 25 for selective service. You are also committing to helping the refugees learn about their new community and country. This includes showing them important information about their home and personal safety, teaching them their rights and responsibilities, as well as US laws. You'll teach them how to use public transportation and make sure that they know how to find locations in their communities, such as the local library, schools, and food bank. You will guide them through finding a job, setting up banking, and helping them manage their money. You can research organizations in your area that provide ongoing community services to refugees, such as food banks or rental assistance. Your group will also help the refugees find a job in your community. Refugees are eligible to work upon arrival by using their I-94. That means as soon as the refugees arrive, they can get a job. Please note that refugees are not allowed to work for sponsors. Be prepared to help them in their job search by mentoring them to find and keep a job in your community, sharing knowledge about workplace culture, norms, and rules, connecting them to workplace development programs, supporting them in preparing a resume and/or completing application forms, and of course, helping them practice for interviews. You will help parents enroll their kids in school. Children under the age of 18 must be enrolled in school. To do this, make sure that the children have their required vaccinations and documents for enrollment. You can check to see if your school district has any special programs for refugee and immigrant students. You can also research Head Start, Early Start, and other preschool and childcare programs for the little ones, and also identify free or low-cost childcare programs for the youngest children that will be necessary for parents to work. I'm going to pass this back over to Asha to talk about the training certificate.
Thanks, Becca. Here on the screen, you can see what the training certificate looks like. To upload the certificate, you can see in the middle of the screen where it says Upload Files. Simply click on that, locate the certificate where it is saved to your computer, and click Upload. Next, we're going to go over Section 4 of the application, which is the Refugee Information section. If you are sponsoring someone you do know, you will need to include the refugee's information as part of the application. In order to sponsor a refugee you know, you will be required to provide details about the refugee, including their name, birth date, situation that led to their becoming a refugee, and complete some additional application steps. When you apply to sponsor a refugee, you are referring them to the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. All information provided must be accurate and will be reviewed by the U.S. government officials. Before entering information, we recommend that you complete the refugee eligibility tool that we spoke about earlier in the presentation for every adult refugee that you would like to sponsor, and use the Sponsor Someone You Know tutorial session at this website. This is only a tutorial and not the Sponsor Essentials training. We will offer a QR code on the next slide that will direct you to each of the resources. This will help you to understand that you will need for the application. Here are those websites and QR codes. We will pause here briefly to give you a chance to get this information. Again, the first link provided here is for an informational tutorial and is not the Sponsorship Essentials training required for the application. All refugees must be registered by September 30th of 2023 with the UNHCR or the government where they currently live. This registration means they have a document or card to verify this status. If there is no proof of registration available, you cannot submit an application for this person. Exemptions will be allowed on a very limited basis. Use the guide you see indicated in the middle of the screen here to help you with these details. The term refugee refers to any person outside of their country of nationality who is unable to return due to persecution or fear of future persecution. The 5 protected grounds are race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, and political opinion. These are the questions related to the refugee claim as they appear in the application. Answer all that apply and pay close attention to the character count requirements. You will be asked the following. Did the refugee previously suffer any harm in their country of origin? Who harmed them? Do not name specific individuals. Were they harmed because of their ethnicity, religion, nationality, political opinion, or for being a part of any type of group? Do they fear they would be harmed if they return to their country of nationality? And Becca's going to go over the Provide Preferences section.
All right, thank you, Asha. So the Indicate Preferences section. Matching groups, so this is sponsor groups that are sponsoring a refugee that they do not know. They are going to indicate specific preferences that will help ensure a good match. Preferences might include the refugee's spoken language, nationality, or the case composition, which means the number of people in the family, and whether it includes children and/or elders. All groups, not just matching, will be asked to provide the preferred airport for the refugee's arrival. Now we're going to move into what you need to do to show on your application that you are financially prepared to sponsor refugees. You will provide each refugee with basic financial support for the 90-day sponsorship period. There is a required amount of $2,425 per refugee that you will use to support that refugee over the course of the sponsorship period. The sponsor group will hold these funds until the refugee arrives. After the refugees arrive, you will spend the funds to help them. You might need more than that $2,425 per refugee, depending on the cost of living in your community and other factors like family size. So if you live someplace where it's particularly expensive, you might need to budget more than $2,425 per refugee. Financial support must include cash and may also include donated materials or services such as furniture or housing. You will need to create a budget outlining all of your costs, including both monthly costs like rent and utilities, and also one-time costs like furnishings for the home, clothing, deposits, and any other one-time expenses. Sponsor groups will need to research the cost of all things the refugees will need. Make a plan for items that may be donated. How will you solicit these donations? And then how are you going to collect and store them until needed? Add up the total costs to determine the amount of financial support you will need for the first 90 days. You may need more if benefits are delayed or finding employment takes longer than anticipated. This research will give you the amount that you need to fundraise to support the refugees that you are sponsoring. To meet the application requirements, you must show that you have raised at least 60% of the total required amount. This comes out to $1,455 per refugee, including children. You can continue to raise the remaining funds between when you submit the application and when the refugee actually arrives in the US. The evidence used to show that you've raised 60% of the total can be in the form of a bank statement, a letter from a faith-based organization, foundation, or a nonprofit, or a GoFundMe screenshot. If you choose to show a bank statement as evidence, it needs to be from an account that is being used specifically for the sponsor. It cannot be your personal bank account that you use for your own banking. The account can be in the name of a group member or in the group name. Personal accounts that are used for other purposes, like your personal checking account that you use to buy your groceries, will not be accepted. This needs to be a bank account that is set up solely for the purpose of holding the funds for the refugee. Your group may choose to partner with a nonprofit organization to hold funds for your sponsor group. A qualifying organization could be a faith-based organization, a foundation, or a nonprofit. The nonprofit will need to provide a letter stating the total amount of money that they are holding from the sponsor, that they are holding for the sponsor group. They should mention the sponsor group by name in this letter, and they should also print it on an official letterhead, and the letter should be signed by an official from the organization. You may also raise funds through GoFundMe or other fundraising platforms that you can find online. If you do this, make sure to use your sponsor group name as the title of the donations page. Your proof of funds will be a screenshot of your fundraising page showing the total amount raised for your sponsor group. This will only count if it indicates the name of your sponsor group. To determine the amount of money that you will need, the application will help you calculate the total number of funds for the number of people that you're wanting to sponsor. Multiply the number of people times 1,455, which is 60% of the total required 2,425. And this will give you the total amount of funds to show with your application by including either the GoFundMe screenshot, the bank statement, or the letter from the nonprofit organization. So this application will do all of this math for you. When you input the number of people that you're going to sponsor, it will shoot out the total amount of funds that you need to raise, as well as the 60% number that you need to raise at the time of application. I'm going to pass this back over to Asha to walk us through what happens after you submit your application.
Thanks, Becca. This is the screen you will see once you've submitted your application and are on your way to your next steps. Let's cover what happens next. Once the Submit button is clicked, each sponsor group member will receive an email that contains a link to review and sign the commitment form. The group coordinator should tell their members to check their emails and look for the commitment form email. When all of the members have completed this task, you can look at your application dashboard. The status will change to application submitted. The group coordinator will also receive an email stating that all commitment forms have been received. All applications will be reviewed by trained Welcome Corps team members. Upon review, application will either be approved, pending, which means your group will be notified of additional information required to complete the application, or denied. You will find notifications of all updates to your application on the application dashboard and/or email. On the application dashboard, you will see under My Application Updates, Action Needed, along with what action is required and the due date. Once you complete the necessary steps, it will say Completed. You may receive email notifications about additional information required or tasks you need to complete. All emails will be sent to the address used to register the sponsor group account. Do note, though, that if you are asked to upload additional documents, this must not be done via email and must be completed on the application dashboard. Welcome Corps has already received thousands of applications from those wanting to sponsor a refugee they know. Welcome Corps cannot provide updates on the status of your application via email, phone, or the one-on-one Zoom meetings with an application coach. All communication with Welcome Corps will come through an email sent to the private sponsor group coordinator. Please allow several months for the Welcome Corps to process your application to sponsor someone you know. Note, matching applications are typically processed in 1 month, since they do not require refugee documentation review. Refugees coming through Welcome Corps will not arrive faster than other refugees coming through the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. When a sponsor applies to sponsor a refugee they know through Welcome Corps, their application refers the refugee to the U.S. route. They will be processed by the U.S. government and have to pass required refugee status screening, security screening, and health screening. I'm going to hand it over to Becca about after your application is approved.
Thanks, Asha. All right, so for sponsor groups that are matching with a refugee that they do not know, upon approval, you'll be assigned to a private sponsor organization or a PSO, if you haven't already identified which one you might be working with. At that point, your PSO is going to give you information on next steps and communicate with you throughout the process. Matching groups will also receive a survey that will help us find the right match for you. You will have the chance to give information about your sponsor group and your community. Your group will then be matched with a refugee, and then you will welcome that refugee into your community. If you are sponsoring a refugee that you know, then the sponsor group will be notified once their application is approved. Once you have an expected arrival date, you may be connected to a PSO for ongoing support. Named refugees will be referred to the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program, or USRAP. The U.S. government will process the refugee and conduct health and security screenings. If the refugee passes all the screenings, USRAP will arrange transportation to the U.S., and the Welcome Corps will notify your group of the arrival date. Then, ultimately, the refugee will arrive in your community. Once the refugee arrives in the U.S., your group will provide all of the support and services that you have described in your application. You will utilize the funds that you raised to support the refugees through their first 90 days here in the U.S. Your private sponsor organization will provide ongoing support and guidance along the way, and make sure that you get reminders regarding the required reporting 30 and 90 days, as well as 6 and 12-month surveys. Thank you for choosing to sponsor refugees through the Welcome Corps. You now have the information needed to complete an application and sponsor a refugee or refugee family in your community. If you find that you still have questions after watching this presentation and you would like to meet with an application support staff one-on-one, you can sign up for a chance to do so at our Calendly link on the screen now, or use the QR code to connect directly to our Calendly. We have dedicated staff available to help you through the application process. If you're already working with a PSO, you may connect directly with them for further guidance as well. We highly recommend, as you're working on this application, it's a good idea to go ahead and make an appointment and meet with us. Even if you're pretty sure that you know what you're doing, just so that we can look over the application with you and make sure that you have everything right before you hit that submit button. All right, that is going to conclude our presentation for today. Thank you guys for watching all the way to the end. And we hope to see you in some of our application support sessions happening soon. Bye.